Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where I'm keeping this better late than never train rolling with a look at Earthrise Starscream, because I am nothing if not timely. It is what it is. But yes, Earthrise Starscream. This is actually a pretty darn cool figure. I am not enough of a Seeker fan to want to get any of the other Seekers or the Coneheads. I feel like in my mind one is enough, so Thundercracker and Skywarp look cool, but I just don't want three of the exact same figure in different colors. As I understand it, this is not necessarily derived from, but definitely heavily inspired by the classic Seeker mold, which I never had, so I can't make that comparison. I can't even talk about that comparison because I've never actually had any classic Seekers. The only Seekers I've had have basically just been the Siege Seekers, and yeah, this is definitely not that. Okay, I was going to say, for one thing, you don't just have the robot folded up into a ball with the plane on top of it, but you kind of still do. If you look down here, it's like just this plank underneath that is the entire, or almost the entire robot, with just like a jet on top. Not as egregious as what happened in Siege, though. But yeah, this is, from my own recollection and from what I've seen, pretty spot on for a G1-centric looking Starscream, which, yay, G1, more, yay. I'm just really getting tired of G1, but thankfully that will probably change in the next line that comes out after Earthrise. Anyway, definitely looks like G1 Starscream. It's that kind of gray jet with the appropriate amounts of red and blue in places. There's probably some discrepancies here and there, but just based on my internal thoughts on what G1 Starscream looked like, this is pretty darn close for a jet. It's got a really nice shape. The junk underneath is a bit egregious, but it does tuck away nicely. I feel like silhouette-wise, this isn't too bad. It's maybe a little chunky right in here, but it's alright. It is loaded with detailing, as is customary with official Transformers lines at this point, in particular the non-Cyberverse ones. Lots and lots of molding, which we'll see in more detail in robot mode. One thing that's kind of nifty is they even molded, it's hard to see, but they molded like little seats in there. It's a completely unnecessary detail that has absolutely no purpose whatsoever because of how this whole thing comes together, but that's still kind of cool. And I don't really have much else to say about Starscream's jet mode, so let's get adjusted here and do some size comparisons. Here he is with a couple of different standard deluxes in various states, so you can get an idea of how big the jet is, and proportionally, no, not as big as a jet needs to be when compared to a car, but still I think an adequately large toy when compared to another toy that's meant to be a smaller size. Here he is. Let me bring this down a little bit. Here he is with Earthrise Optimus Prime, and I will admit, it is kind of funny how Prime is meant to be leader class, Starscream is a Voyager class, and without the trailer, it doesn't really look to be the case, but Prime does come with the trailer. And here he is with the Duck Tank. Okay, transformation time. And here we have Earthrise Starscream in his robot mode, and that is a Starscream-looking Starscreamy Starscream figure. He is very, very cool. Does have a little bit of that nose cone kibble on the back, which, again, as I understand it, is also a common thing with the classic Seeker mold, though it's not attached to the back of his head, so he can actually like move his head all the way around without anything kind of banging up back here. It's a little unsightly from the back. The weird thing is, like, this being on the back doesn't bother me. I just kind of wish that it slid down or something a little bit more so that this bit wasn't, like, right alongside his head there. His head mostly blocks it when you're looking at him, but it's a thing. There are some things I'm not as keen on. Primarily, the torso is extremely boxy. And I mean, it's not, you know, a deal breaker type thing. I'm not hating on the figure for it. It's just, you know, proportionally speaking, I feel like this section could be a little bit slimmer and it'd look a little bit better. Paint-wise, color-wise, it actually looks pretty darn good. The color distribution is really nice. I like the mixture of red and this kind of, I guess, grayish plastic in the torso. And of course, you get that gray and blue on the arms, and then gray, blue, and kind of a gunmetal on the legs. It's a nice combination of colors. And I think what they did with the side wings, winglets, whatever, is pretty clever because it just kind of gets out of the way. It doesn't really stand out when you've got the figure standing here. And yeah, you can kind of see it from the side, but like, it doesn't hinder articulation. He can still get a pretty decent ankle tilt out of it. He can still kind of angle his toes a little bit. It's not a bad way to deal with that kibble. And he does have that classic Seeker cockpit chest. This, in my mind, is a little bit also of a... all my problems are with the torso, basically. And again, not saying I don't like the figure. I actually really, really like the figure. It's just the cockpit section here feels a little too small to me. I understand the cockpit normally doesn't go all the way up to Starscream's neck. I get that. But I feel like this maybe could have been a little thinner, though maybe there was stability, I don't know. But I feel like just if there was a little bit more cockpit revealed here, it would have looked better in my mind. He also does have a bit of a gap on the side here, though thankfully it doesn't actually go all the way through his body because there's a decent chunk of plain fuselage kind of hiding in there. So it's a little weird how this just comes down and then stops, but it's alright. Another part of me is kind of wishing that these were angled in a little bit more, but it's a $30 mainline toy. I imagine that would require a bit more engineering than something like this has the budget for. Molding wise, there is just a ton of detail. Like, even the insides of his toes have a lot of molded detail. And I really like the painting that they did on the legs. Looking at the figure as a whole, I definitely would love to go in and add a little bit more detail here and there, because that's just who I am as a person. But I feel like if you're just looking at this as a Starscream to have on the shelf, he's not really missing anything overt. I could be completely wrong, because I am not a Transformers expert by any means, but it just kind of, color-wise, color distribution-wise, works extremely well for me. I do think they kind of cheated a little bit with the wings in the sense that they wanted to give him clearly this kind of swept-up, angled, almost horn-like silhouette for the wings on his back, which is great, and it looks great in robot mode. In plane mode, I didn't mention it because I didn't think to, but in plane mode, it does kind of look a little weird how the wings are swept back like that and not more flush. But again, $30 mainline toy, I don't think that they're going to work in the engineering to completely change the shape of the wings. I'm just glad that the wings hinge back like they do and can angle back like this, because it just adds a little something, you know? As for the head, that is definitely a Seeker head. It's that kind of telltale black helmet look with the weird little intakes on the sides. Very boxy, almost like a forward-sloping Bruticus brow. And then the silver face with the red eyes. I'm sure people have complained about this, so I will not be the first, but it's Starscream. I feel like maybe they should have given him a little bit of a smirk or something, because this just kind of looks... He doesn't look all that interested to be Starscream, and I mean, it's Starscream. Starscream loves being Starscream. The only thing Starscream loves is Starscream. I know I don't normally cover accessories, but it's Starscream. The null rays are a part of his character. You can't really think of Starscream without thinking of null rays, unless you're thinking of Prime. At least in my mind. But the null rays are both molded really well. They have, from what I can recall, again, not an expert, but they do have a rather null ray evocative shape. They are mounted in the proper spot, and it's great that you can totally Just have him pointing his weird little bicep cannons at people. So yeah, aside from the torso being a bit boxy, I'm really into this figure. I just kind of picked him up because I wanted to get him, and I liked the Earthrise, more Earth mode centric figure compared to the Siege figure that I used to have. And at the time, Thundercracker and Skywarp hadn't even been announced yet. So yeah, I got him, and I'm extremely glad I did. Maybe at some point in the future, I might upgrade, for lack of a better term, or just exchange Starscream for either Thundercracker or Skywarp or one of the Coneheads, but I feel like one of this mold is enough. When you think Seekers, you think Starscream and everyone else. And so I am probably just going to stick with Starscream. Unless they maybe announce, like, Slipstream or something like that. I could be down for a Slipstream. We will see. But anyway, before we wrap things up, I actually need to talk about how the robot stacks up to other robots, don't I? Because I almost forgot to do that. Here he is with a couple of standard-ish size deluxes, and yeah, he's definitely got that height. You would expect a Voyager to be bigger than a deluxe, and he definitely is. Here he is with Prime. Let me bring Starscream in a little bit more, and surprisingly, I guess, Earthrise Optimus Prime is about a head taller than Starscream. Regardless of how they're supposed to look next to each other height-wise, I think, just in terms of having these two robots standing next to each other, they look good. And here he is with the duck tank. Alright, that does it for Earthrise Starscream. As I've already said, I pretty much already did the wrap-up, but as I said, I do really like this figure. I'm not into the torso being as bulky as it is, and I do wish we could see a little bit more of that Seeker cockpit chest, but overall, I do think it's really nice. The colors that they use and the color distribution is really spot on in my mind. He looks great if you ignore the bulkiness of the chest, and even then, it doesn't really bother me. It's just that nitpicky thing. And kibble-wise, he's pretty much just got the slightly awkward nose cone and like the ankle wings, but when you're looking at him from the front, you don't really notice either of those things. I would be tempted to get the other Seekers because I did something similar with Siege, but knowing myself and also the fact that I have limited shelf space, I feel like that's a mistake. So I'm gonna stick with just one of this mold. But like I said, I may replace Starscream with a different character version of this mold somewhere down the line. We'll see what happens. We'll see what gets announced. We'll see what I might be able to get my hands on. I don't know. But regardless, that is how I feel about Earthrise Starscream. What do you all think? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.